This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
It belongs in a museum!
Okay, so finding a magic item in a dungeon is very exciting, right? I mean, it's expected. After crawling through these ruins, fighting monsters, and nearly dying a few times, you're rewarded at the heart of the dungeon with something special, some rare or even legendary relic. Maybe it's an ancient sword embedded in stone, or a magical horn resting on a pedestal just waiting to be claimed. So you take that reward, and you keep it safe, deep within the bag of holding, waiting for you to use at a perfect moment. If you remember it's there after all. 20 sessions from now, maybe you forgot all about that relic. Or hey, maybe this is a magical axe that's so damn good that it immediately replaces your old weapon and becomes your new main weapon. This ancient axe relics forged long ago, guarded for centuries, is now your regular axe until you get a new one in a future session. Sure, this axe does 2d8 damage instead of 1d12, which is, I guess an upgrade. But is that it though? Is that really all this dungeon existed for? All this history, all this danger, just so the party could get a slightly better weapon that isn't too overpowered by the end of things? I think it's time that we start treating these magical relics hidden away in temples, sealed in vaults, and buried at the bottom of a forgotten dungeon as relics that were hidden and guarded down here for a reason. That's what we're going to do on today's episode of Worldbuilding with a Human Man, a series where I, a human man, give you tips, tricks, and ideas to make your Dungeons & Dragons world feel more detailed, more alive, and more intentional. And if you're new here, ahoy! I'm the D&D Hunter, definitely not a mind flayer, just a regular human man. This mustache is very much real. I make D&D videos every single week, and this week is all about making relics that feel ancient, powerful, and important to your world. Let's get started. When it comes to relics in fantasy, there are practically an unlimited amount of examples to pull from. Most recently, we could talk about the Luxon Beacon from the Mighty Nine, which just recently wrapped its first season of its animated series adaptation. The Luxon Beacon is described as an ancient relic, one that holds the souls of people willingly or not. Using it can harm the user, and its powers can become addictive in a very real way. This beacon can literally end the world if the user wanted it to. It's a relic used by the series' villains as well as potential allies, and importantly, it isn't exactly hidden to the world, because a lot of people actually know that this thing exists. People are fighting over it, and the world has to adapt to its presence. I think the most famous example of a fantasy relic, though, is one that is hidden from its world, the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, the greatest relic known, or I guess unknown, to Middle-earth. It grants its user a form of immortality and invisibility, but the moment it's worn, evil can sense you. And much like the Luxon Beacon, as you get closer to its source, its relic can become addictive in a way. Like you don't want to let it go. Notice the similarity there? Users that wield these relics can be manipulated by it. This is the main ingredient for a truly effective Dungeons & Dragons relic once they're discovered. But before we get there, we've got to world build these things properly. I mentioned an axe at the end of a dungeon earlier, so let's stick with that, but let's actually give it some weight this time. So everyone roll history, because we're going to need to add some lore to this thing. When designing relic lore, there are a few things that we need to make sure that we check off. The relic's origin, its power, its relevancy to the world, whether it's publicly known or completely forgotten, and the reason it's located where it currently is. Is your relic sitting here in the heart of a dungeon? If so, why? So let's go through this in order, starting with its origin. This is where most relics can fall apart a little bit, because the origin is usually just, someone made it long ago, and now it's here, and now it's yours. Which is, that's technically true, but it's also not very well detailed, it can be a little boring. A relic's origin should answer a very simple question. What problem was this thing trying to solve? Because nobody built world-altering artifacts for fun, not even wizards. Actually, especially not wizards. They definitely have a purpose for building these things. So let's get back to our axe. This axe was forged during a war that wasn't being won. Or maybe giants were taking over. Maybe an empire was collapsing. Maybe the gods became silent suddenly. The point is, you gotta make this axe exist because something went wrong in the past. And this relic was created to solve what went wrong. That should make it a little bit more interesting. Was it forged by a kingdom as a last resort? By a cult that thought they were saving the world? By a single desperate hero who didn't care what the cost would be, as long as the war ended? Relics tend to be so old that their origin and history could be near forgotten. It's worth noting that the intent behind a relic always outlives the people who made it. And sometimes that intent is still active. Now let's talk about the powers. Something that the players will probably ask as soon as they get their large, medium, or small hands on this thing is, what does it do? What stats does this have? Similar to a cursed artifact, which I talk about in this video here, if you wanna check it out. This relic should have a cost. I mean, it's been hidden, guarded, and buried for all this time, right? What's the reason for that? So maybe this axe does deal more damage, but maybe it also cuts through more than just armor. And that's a problem, because if this axe can kill something that was meant to be unkillable, then somebody out there is probably going to want that axe back, or destroy it, or make sure no one ever swings it again. So if your barbarian happily accepts this new axe they found in a dungeon and goes out into the world proudly strapping it to their back, someone who knows exactly what this is might notice that. That can create a whole new questline and a story arc, because in time, your party may notice that you're being followed by someone who knows what this is. Next is relevancy. This is the step that turns a cool item into an actual relic. Ask yourself, does the world know about this thing? Because if the answer is no, then why do they not know about this thing? Was it erased from history? Was it covered up? Labeled as a myth so some people would stop looking for it? Or worse, does everyone know about it, but they pretend they don't know about it? Is it this whole sort of like Voldemort in a object where you're like, you don't want to talk about that there? Maybe entire laws exist because of this axe. Maybe certain weapons are banned. Maybe executions are carried out in a very specific way because someone in the past once used this relic and the world panicked afterwards. It changed the whole world. Even if your world's oldest elves don't even know what this relic is, that means to get information on it, you probably have to go to the more immortal people of Dungeons & Dragons, which should be people like liches and vampires. And those guys are usually evil. So if you want to know more about this ancient artifact you found, you may have to do an interview with a vampire to find out about it. Okay. And finally, why is this relic in a dungeon? Why is it guarded by this dragon? Why is it hidden at the bottom of this lake or wherever you may find your relic? Why was it here? Well, because someone likely put it there. Dungeons are not really random, and they're not really natural either. They're usually built, right? They're storage units for mistakes. So maybe the axe was sealed away after the war ended, guarded by those who feared what would happen if it was ever used again. Maybe the dungeon isn't protecting the relic from adventurers and thieves daring to enter it. Maybe it's protecting the world from the relic. It's sealed down here and guarded by the dead to make sure it doesn't escape. To a new adventuring crew, like your party at the table, they may celebrate this loot, but as they do, they don't realize that they've undone a decision someone else made centuries ago. The moment your players leave the dungeon with this relic, the world starts reacting. Even the players don't even realize it yet. And this is where relics become story engines which can help with NPCs and world building. Think about who would care that this thing exists. Not who wants to loot it, but who knows what it was used for. Empires may want it locked away. Churches might fear its presence. Scholars might want to study it, and some people, very dangerous people, might believe it was meant to be used again. An important thing to help build conflict is getting different factions to not agree on what should be done with this relic as word of its appearance begins to spread. If everyone reacts the same way to the relic, it's not really doing its job, it's just a rare magic item. One group might see this relic as a necessary evil. Another might see it as proof that the old war isn't truly over. Another might see it as a symbol, something that they can rally armies or start revolutions just to justify terrible decisions. It can help build their name up so then in a future campaign that takes place maybe 200 years after this one ends, these party members that took this relic will be in the history books. They're now custodians of a mistake that history already tried to bury. And even if your players don't swing that axe or whatever it is you chose to be the relic, the fact that they have it is enough to pull them into politics, conflicts, and attention that they may have not asked for. That's how you know you've designed a real relic, because it creates problems just by being on your party. Let's go back to that addiction side that I mentioned at the start of this video. Powerful objects, especially ancient ones, should feel tempting. Yeah, relics can talk. Sentient items are great in Dungeons & Dragons, and it can also spread into a whole sort of different quest line, which is also a different sort of discussion that I want to do in a future video. So stay tuned for that topic on like swords that talk and stuff like that. But let's say that our relic in this video, just for relevancy's sake, does not speak. It doesn't have a personality. It doesn't talk at all. It's just a relic. It's a powerful item, but it still needs to feel reliable. Maybe it always works. That could work, right? Literally. I mean, like, maybe it never fails when everything else does. Your players can kind of give a chuckle and look at the DM and be like, yeah, I rolled a 5. That probably doesn't hit, right? And you, as the dungeon master, would stare at them and just say, no, it hits. Roll damage. This can turn near-death moments into automatic victories over and over again. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, the party starts planning around it. Saying things like, give the axe to him, or he should go first, or we'll be fine as long as the axe is there. That's the addiction. The relic isn't whispering evil thoughts. You've created these evil intentions without the party even realizing it. It's a bit of a trick, but it can work. And if you've got people in the party that are suspicious of this, that's okay too, because that can add tension around the relic. Gives a real focus and some roleplay around it over why this is so powerful and should we stop using it? Nah, I mean, it's so good. Why would we stop using it? This is also where I like to bring in mechanics. This is the perfect time to start using the Madness table, a table that doesn't seem to be very well known, but it does exist here in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Use this when the relic is used in moments that it was meant for, like killing something ancient or breaking some sort of magical law, turning the tide of battle that should have been lost. Have the wielder make a very high DC wisdom saving throw, and if they fail the roll, they have to roll in this Madness table here. And you don't have to do the long-term Madness table unless the players are using this a lot, though. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be that extreme. Short-term effects work beautifully here. Obsession, paranoia, overconfidence. And if the party keeps leaning on it, if they refuse to give it up, maybe those effects last a little longer next time. Now, one relic in the world is powerful, but multiple relics? That's when your world starts to feel a little old. Not in the sense of, man, this is getting old. More like, man, this is getting old. Like, this world is old. History. There's so much history. Heck yeah. A world with many relics feels like history has been repeated itself for a long, long time. And these relics don't all need to be connected. Some of them absolutely should be. Fragments of the same event, weapons forged in the same war, sort of like pieces of a puzzle being built together. But others don't have to relate at all. Different eras, different cultures, different failures, different magic items. That can all work, right? And this is also a way that you can have them connected to the personality of the other players a bit better. Because a fighter and barbarian might love the idea of an axe relic, but a wizard wouldn't. They'd be more interested in that ancient book or that ancient cloak rather than being interested in like an axe or a sword. I mean, even in real life, civilizations don't make terrible decisions and then they're just like, lesson learned, that'll never happen again, unfortunately. And each relic becomes a snapshot of what that culture valued and what it was willing to sacrifice in the history. Which, I mean, that's world building. You're world building your lore of your campaign. Going back to those connected relics, like putting pieces together of a puzzle, they're great for reinforcing themes. I did a campaign once on a harp that I called the Harp of Time, which is an original idea. And it was its base was in a museum in my world. The adventure of this campaign was finding its harp strings spread across my country to forge this harp back together and use it to go back in time and travel through it. It was one of my early homebrew campaigns, so it's pretty straightforward, it's very simple, but it was a fun adventure and it made for some memorable moments for sure. Especially when the party found out time traveling with this thing required a high performance roll. Otherwise, they're sent to a time that they didn't mean to go to, so it was a fun little panic as everyone's like, who has the highest performance and, oh, can we roll with advantage? And it was a fun time. And then there are the unconnected relics. Relics from forgotten kingdoms, from cultures that didn't survive, from experiments that no one remembers agreeing to. Each one answers a different question, such as, what happens when the magic is overused? What happens when the gods intervene too directly? What happens when someone refuses to stop? What happens when a mind flayer disguises himself into a human man and starts a YouTube channel based on Dungeons & Dragons ideas? These questions can help with world building your world history. So yeah, using multiple relics just help build more of the past. You don't need a full textbook of a 2,000 year timeline. You just need a few objects that prove the world's been here longer than the party has realized. So there's one takeaway from all this, it's this. Relics are magic items, yes. But they're also evidence. Evidence that someone, somewhere, tried to change the world, and they paid for it. When you treat relics like that, your dungeons stop feeling like loot rooms, your magic items stop feeling disposable, and your world starts feeling ancient in a way that the players can actually interact with. That's it for this episode of World Building with the Human Man. Hope you guys caught some ideas here, learned a little bit about using relics in your campaigns, and maybe made that reward room in the dungeons a little bit more interesting. If you want more world building ideas like this has been, like I mentioned, World Building with the Human Man. It's a series that you can check out the playlist that this video is in, because I've had a few more videos on this sort of topic of just making better, more livable D&D homebrew worlds. Thanks for watching. Quick reminder, I'm not a mind flayer, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.